The rain was soaking through my expensive dress as I stood outside the Willowbrook estate in Chicago on that cold March evening. It was exactly 7:42 p.m. on March 15th, 2023, and I could still feel the sting on my cheek where my mother's hand had connected moments earlier. Worse, I could see the fear and confusion in my 5-year-old daughter Lily's eyes as she witnessed her grandparents verbally and physically assault her mother, all because I had finally refused to pay my sister's rent for the umpteenth time. They thought I was a failure, a disappointment, the family black sheep who couldn't even support her own sister. What they didn't know was that I was about to turn the tables in a way none of them could imagine. The path that led me here wasn't short or simple, but what I did next would change everything, and make sure they regretted every cruel word, every dismissive glance, and every dollar they'd ever extracted from me. My name is Audrey Lewis. I'm 34 years old and work as a marketing manager in Denver, where I live with my daughter Lily. At least, that's what my family thinks I am, just a moderately successful single mom struggling to make ends meet while simultaneously being expected to financially support my younger sister's lavish lifestyle. I always believed family comes first. I was raised on that mantra. Repeated it to myself through countless sacrifices, even when it cost me everything. But that rainy night in Chicago marked the end of that belief system. It was the night I stopped being their doormat and showed them exactly who Audrey Lewis really is. The pattern started years ago. My sister Ashley, 5 years my junior at 29, has always been the golden child, pretty, charismatic, and now an aspiring influencer who has never held a real job for more than 3 months. Our parents, Linda and Robert Lewis, have enabled her entire life, and somewhere along the way, they decided I should enable her too. Audrey, your sister has so much potential. She just needs a little help getting started, my mother said when Ashley dropped out of college to find herself in Bali for 6 months. Guess who paid for that trip? When Ashley met Chad, an investment banker with an aggressive personality and expensive tastes, my parents were thrilled. Finally, someone successful in the family. Never mind that Chad was dismissive, borderline verbally abusive, and spent more money than he made to maintain appearances. You could learn something from Chad about ambition. My father told me once, apparently forgetting I had worked my way up from intern to marketing manager while raising a child alone after my husband died unexpectedly when Lily was just 6 months old. The loans started small, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, but they grew. August 10th, 2021, marked the first major loan when Ashley called me sobbing about a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required $15,000 immediately. It's a collaboration with a major fashion brand, she explained vaguely. They want me as the face of their new campaign, but I need to invest in production costs first. Against my better judgment, I transferred the money. The fashion brand turned out to be a dropshipping scheme that collapsed within weeks. When I gently asked about repayment, Ashley acted offended. I can't believe you're being so petty about money when I'm going through such a difficult time, she said. My parents backed her up. Your sister put herself out there and took a risk. That takes courage. Don't be so selfish, Audrey. By December 2021, Ashley and Chad had moved into a luxury apartment they couldn't afford, when they inevitably fell behind on rent. Guess who got the call? It's only $2,500 a month, my mother said. You don't have any real expenses. You live in that tiny house, and you don't even date. What else are you spending money on? The fact that I was raising a child, paying a mortgage, and saving for Lily's future apparently didn't count as real expenses. I paid their rent, and then I paid it again the next month, and the next. By mid-2022, it had become an expected monthly contribution. Thanksgiving 2022 was particularly brutal. We gathered at my parents' suburban Connecticut home, where Ashley arrived 3 hours late, making a grand entrance in designer clothes. Sorry, everyone. Had an emergency photo shoot for my Instagram. The lighting was just perfect, and you know how it is. The influencer life never stops. She flipped her perfectly highlighted hair, while everyone except me cooed in admiration. Later, as I helped my mother in the kitchen, she looked at me, in my practical sweater and jeans, and sighed. You know, Audrey, you'll never be as successful as Ashley, so don't bother trying. But at least you can help support her dreams. That's something to be proud of. I nearly dropped the casserole dish I was holding. Mom, I have a successful career. I was promoted last month. She waved dismissively. Yes, but that's just a regular job. Ashley is building something special. She's going to be famous. When I mentioned this exchange to my father, hoping for some support, he shrugged. Your mother's right. Ashley has that special something. You've always been more practical. That's why we know we can count on you to help out. The holidays continued in this vein. On December 5th, 2022, we had a family dinner to celebrate Chad's new position at his firm. When I mentioned my recent promotion, Chad laughed. Marketing manager at some little Denver company? What do you manage? Their Facebook page? He snickered. When I didn't laugh, he said, Stop being so sensitive. We're just joking, as the rest of the family chuckled along. But the real breaking point came a week later, on December 12th, 2022. My grandmother had died earlier that year, leaving a modest inheritance to be split between Ashley and me. I'd been counting on my $25,000 portion to set up a college fund for Lily. We gathered at the Rosewood Country Club in Connecticut, my parents' choice, for what I thought was a family reunion. Over 50 relatives and family friends were there, including my cousin Emma, who works as a family lawyer. My parents called for everyone's attention during dinner. Champagne glasses raised. We have wonderful news, my father announced. Ashley and Chad are buying their first home. Applause erupted as Ashley dabbed fake tears. We found the perfect place. It's a bit of a stretch financially, but Mom and Dad are helping with the down payment. I felt a cold sensation wash over me. Somehow, I already knew what was coming. My mother turned to me, that familiar expectant look on her face. Audrey, we've decided to use your portion of Grandma's inheritance as part of their down payment. Ashley needs it more than you do right now. The room went silent. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. Lily, sitting beside me coloring, looked up at the sudden tension. Mom, that money was Grandma's wish for me. Please reconsider, I said quietly. I was planning to use it for Lily's college fund. My father's face darkened. College? That's years away. Ashley needs this now. Don't be selfish. I've already paid her rent for over a year, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. I've given her loans that were never repaid. That inheritance is mine. That's when my mother stood up, her voice cutting across the room. If you can't even support your own family, don't show your face here. My father joined in. Ashley needs us more than you ever did. She has real potential. Ashley, sensing her moment, added with a laugh. Maybe if you tried harder, you'd be more like me. I looked around the room. Some relatives looked uncomfortable. Others nodded along. My cousin Emma stared in shock. And worst of all, Lily had stopped coloring, her little face confused and frightened as she watched the adults in her life shame her mother publicly. I took Lily's hand, stood up without another word, and walked out. Sitting in my 2015 Honda Civic outside the club, I felt my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Lily had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional turmoil. In the rearview mirror, I could see the glittering lights of the country club, where my family continued celebrating without us. That was when I vowed to stop being their doormat. What my family didn't know, what I had never told them because they'd never bothered to ask, was that I was far more than just a marketing manager. The truth was, I'd been building something of my own since 2019. It started as a hobby, crafting handmade home decor items to deal with the grief after my husband's death. I set up an Etsy shop called Cozy Crafts to sell a few pieces. Then a home design blog featured one of my handcrafted wall hangings, and orders exploded overnight. Within 6 months, I had to hire help. Within a year, I officially established Cozy Crafts LLC, rented a small warehouse space, and hired 5 full-time artisans to keep up with demand. By the time of that humiliating family gathering, My little hobby was generating over $600,000 in annual revenue. But that wasn't all. My late husband had been meticulous about financial planning. His life insurance policy, combined with my careful investing, had grown into a $2.3 million diversified portfolio of stocks and real estate. I owned silent stakes in 3 Denver restaurants, including the Blue Oak Bistro, which had become one of the hottest reservations in town, and the unique hanging planter design I'd created in my early crafting days. I'd patented it, and the royalties alone brought in $20,000 every month. Why had I never told my family about any of this? At first, it was grief. I couldn't bear to discuss anything related to rebuilding my life after losing David. Then, as I watched how they treated Ashley, the constant praise, the endless attention for every minor achievement, I realized something. My success would never be celebrated the same way. They'd either dismiss it, or worse, see it as a resource to exploit even further. So I kept quiet. I drove my modest Honda, lived in my comfortable but unassuming house, and never corrected their assumptions about my financial situation. Meanwhile, I built an empire they knew nothing about. As I drove away from the Rosewood Country Club that night, with my daughter sleeping peacefully in the back seat, a plan began to form in my mind. It wouldn't be quick or simple, but for the first time in years, I felt something other than resignation when thinking about my family. I felt powerful. The next morning, I started gathering evidence, every text demanding money, every email about Ashley's rent, every bank transfer statement. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar I'd given to my sister over the years, a sum that totaled well over $75,000. I downloaded the family group chat history, full of backhanded compliments and outright insults about my life choices. I saved voicemails from my parents, including one where my mother clearly stated, "We expect you to cover Ashley's rent again this month. It's the least you can do since you're not contributing to the family in any other meaningful way." On February 1st, 2023, I consulted with Morrison & Associates, a prestigious law firm in Denver. The senior partner listened intently as I laid out my situation, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. "Ms. Lewis, what you're describing could potentially constitute financial abuse," he said, "especially given the inheritance situation. Have you considered pursuing legal action?" I had, but that wasn't my primary goal. "I want them to know exactly who I am and what they've done," I explained. "The legal action is secondary." We developed a 2-pronged strategy: preparation for a potential lawsuit claiming fraud regarding the inheritance, and a plan for what I privately thought of as the reveal. As fate would have it, the perfect opportunity presented itself soon after. In late February, I received a gilt-edged invitation to Ashley and Chad's engagement party, scheduled for March 15th at the prestigious Willowbrook Estate in Chicago. All family members and their extensive social circle would be there, over 150 people, including several of Ashley's influencer friends who would undoubtedly be live-streaming the event. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I had one unexpected ally in all this: my direct supervisor at the marketing firm, Karen Williams. She had overheard enough one-sided phone conversations to piece together my family situation, and she'd been quietly supportive for years. "Take whatever time you need," she told me when I requested 2 weeks off in March. "And Audrey? Make them regret it." I spent those 2 weeks finalizing my preparations. I hired a professional editor to compile the most damning texts, emails, and recorded conversations into a compelling presentation. I worked with a financial analyst to create clear, easy-to-understand graphics showing exactly how much money had flowed from me to Ashley over the years, and I paid a premium to a private investigator who uncovered some very interesting information about Chad's successful career, including the fact that he was currently under internal investigation for expense account fraud. I also went shopping. The dress I chose for the engagement party cost $3,800, more than I would typically spend, but this was a special occasion. The deep blue designer gown was elegant, sophisticated, and unmistakably expensive. I completed the look with the diamond earrings David had given me for our first anniversary, Jewelry my family had never seen because I'd never had occasion to wear such fine pieces around them. On the day of the engagement party, I flew to Chicago with Lily. I'd arranged for her to spend the evening with a trusted babysitter in our hotel suite. I didn't want her to witness what was about to happen, even though part of me was doing this for her. "Remember how brave you are, Mommy," she said as she hugged me goodbye. Repeating the phrase I often told her. If only she knew how much those words meant to me at that moment. The Willowbrook estate was magnificent. Its crystal ballroom decorated with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers for the occasion. Ashley and Chad stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced smiles. When they saw me, their expressions faltered momentarily. "Audrey," Ashley said, clearly surprised. "I didn't think you'd come." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, smiling warmly. "Congratulations to you both." Chad looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my obviously expensive dress. "New look? Must have maxed out the credit cards for this one." I just smiled and moved into the ballroom, where my parents were holding court with their friends. My mother's eyes widened when she saw me, taking in my appearance with obvious confusion. "Audrey, you came?" She air-kissed my cheek. "And you're dressed up." "It's a special occasion," I said. "Is everything ready for the speeches?" "Yes, of course. Your father will speak first, then Chad's parents, and Ashley's maid of honor will finish." "Perfect," I said, already noting the location of the AV control booth. I spent the next hour mingling, sipping champagne, and watching as Ashley paraded around the room, showing off her enormous diamond ring and taking selfies with her influencer friends. Several times. I caught my parents watching me warily, clearly unsettled by my calm demeanor and unexpected appearance. At 7:30 p.m., the formal part of the evening began. My father took the microphone, waxing poetic about Ashley finding her perfect match, about how proud they were of her accomplishments, and how certain they were of her bright future. "Ashley has always been special," he said, raising his glass. "From the moment she was born, we knew she was destined for greatness." The crowd applauded as Ashley pretended to wipe away tears. Chad's father spoke next, talking about how his son had found a woman worthy of the family name. The maid of honor, one of Ashley's influencer friends, gushed about how Ashley was literally the most amazing person ever, and how their friendship was total goals. Then, as the applause died down, I made my move. I had coordinated with the AV technician earlier, slipping him a generous tip to cue up my presentation when I gave the signal. Now, I walked confidently to the front of the room and took the microphone. "I'd also like to say a few words about my sister," I said. The room fell silent. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. Ashley's smile became fixed, uncertain. "For those who don't know me, I'm Audrey Lewis, Ashley's older sister. We have a unique relationship." I nodded to the AV tech, and the giant screen behind me came to life, displaying a text message from Ashley. "Just need $1,500 for rent again. It's not like you have anything better to spend it on." "My sister and I have a financial arrangement that not everyone knows about," I continued, my voice steady. "For the past several years, I've been supporting Ashley financially, rent, vacations, business ventures, you name it. I've funded it." The screen changed to display my meticulously kept spreadsheet, with every payment highlighted. In total, I've given Ashley over $75,000 in the past 2 years alone, money that was never repaid, despite promises to the contrary. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Ashley's face had drained of color. Chad looked like he might be sick. "But that's what family is for, right? To support each other?" I smiled. "At least, that's what I was told when my parents decided to take my inheritance, money my grandmother specifically left for me, and give it to Ashley and Chad for their house down payment." The screen changed again, showing a family photo taken at the Rosewood Country Club, where my public humiliation had occurred. On December 12th last year, my parents announced this decision to our entire extended family. When I objected, I was told, and I quote, the screen displayed my mother's exact words in large text, If you can't even support your own family, don't show your face here." My mother gasped audibly. Several guests looked at her in shock. What my family doesn't know, what they never bothered to ask, is that I run a successful business. The screen switched to show the Cozy Crafts LLC website, complete with press features and revenue graphs. My little hobby generates over $500,000 in annual revenue. More screens flashed. My investment portfolio, property deeds, patent documentation. I've built this while raising my daughter alone. After losing my husband when she was just a baby, I've built this despite my family's constant dismissal and demands. I've built this while paying my sister's rent, funding her failed business ventures, and being told repeatedly that I'll never be as successful as her. I looked directly at Ashley, whose mascara was now running down her cheeks. I kept my success private because I saw how you treated Ashley, constantly praising her for minimal effort while demanding I do more and more. I knew my achievements would either be dismissed or seen as a resource to exploit further. I turned to my parents, who stood frozen in horror. You taught me that family comes first, but today, I'm putting myself and my daughter first. The financial support stops now. The emotional abuse stops now. The final slide appeared on screen, a formal legal letter from Morrison & Associates. I've filed a lawsuit against you for fraud regarding my inheritance. My lawyer will be in touch. I've also documented every instance of emotional and financial abuse over the past 5 years. I paused, looking around the silent room. Several of Ashley's influencer friends had their phones up, live streaming the entire thing. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your love if it comes with these conditions. And I certainly don't need to fund Ashley's lifestyle while being treated like a failure. I set down the microphone, smoothed my expensive dress, and walked calmly toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. My mother called my name, her voice cracking. My father started making excuses to the shocked guests. Ashley collapsed dramatically into a chair, sobbing. But the most satisfying reaction came from the other guests. Aunt Margaret stood up and said loudly, "I always knew something was off in this family." Cousin Emma, the lawyer, was already exchanging business cards with several relatives, and Chad's parents were having a very intense conversation with their son in the corner, likely about his own financial deceptions. As I reached the door, I turned back one last time to see my mother's face, a perfect mixture of shock, shame, and the dawning realization that she had severely underestimated her eldest daughter. Her expression had transformed from smug confidence to pale horror in the span of 10 minutes. It was everything I had hoped for. Outside, the March air was cold, and rain had started to fall. I stood for a moment, letting the rain wash over me, feeling lighter than I had in years. That's when my parents burst through the doors behind me. "How dare you?" my mother hissed, grabbing my arm. "You've ruined Ashley's special day." My father loomed over me. "This is how you repay us? After everything we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked calmly, pulling my arm away. "Name one thing." They stared at me, momentarily speechless. "That's what I thought," I said. "You've done nothing but take and take, while making me feel like I was the selfish one." "You ungrateful!" My mother raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face, the sound cracking through the quiet night. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I simply looked at her with pity. "That's the last time you'll ever lay a hand on me," I said quietly. "And now there are witnesses." She followed my gaze to the doorway, where several guests had followed us out and were watching in horror. Among them was the same influencer who had been live streaming inside. "You've been broadcasting your true selves to the world," I said. "How does it feel to be exposed?" It was at that exact moment, 7:42 p.m., according to my watch, that I saw movement at the edge of the parking lot. To my horror, I spotted Lily running toward me, followed by the frantic babysitter. "I'm so sorry," the sitter gasped as she reached us. She saw the hotel on the invitation and insisted something was wrong. She slipped away when I was on the phone. Lily threw herself into my arms. "Mommy, are you okay?" Before I could answer, my mother spoke. her voice venomous despite our audience. "See what you've done? Dragging your poor child into this spectacle? You're an unfit mother." And then she did the unthinkable. She reached for Lily, as if to take her from me. "Come with Grandma. Sweetheart, your mother is having a breakdown." I pulled Lily away, but not before my father grabbed my shoulder roughly. "Stop making a scene, Audrey." Lily's eyes widened in fear as she witnessed her grandparents' aggression. Something in me snapped, a protective instinct stronger than any I'd ever felt. "Don't you dare touch me or my daughter ever again," I said, my voice dangerously low. "The lawsuit is just the beginning. Touch us again, and I'll add assault charges." I turned to the growing crowd of witnesses. "You all saw that, right? You saw them put their hands on me, while my 5-year-old daughter watched?" Murmurs of confirmation rippled through the group. Someone said, "I got it all on video." My parents finally seemed to realize the severity of their situation. My father's hand dropped from my shoulder. My mother stepped back, suddenly aware of the optics. "Audrey, please," my father said, his voice suddenly conciliatory. "Can we talk privately? This isn't the place." "No," I said simply. "We're done talking. My lawyer will be in touch." I picked up Lily, held her close, and walked to my waiting taxi, leaving my parents standing in the rain, their carefully constructed facade finally washed away. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The video of my revelation and my parents' subsequent behavior went viral, with over 2 million views within days. Ashley lost nearly 100,000 Instagram followers overnight as the scandal spread through social media. My lawyer filed the promised lawsuit, seeking $500,000 for fraud regarding the inheritance and damages for years of emotional abuse. We had documentation for everything, every text, every email, every bank transfer, and now, video evidence of their physical aggression. The family imploded spectacularly. My mother blamed my father for pushing me too far. My father blamed Ashley for demanding too much. Ashley blamed everyone but herself. Within a month, my parents had filed for divorce, ending their 37-year marriage in a flurry of recriminations. Chad, ever the opportunist, broke off the engagement when it became clear that the gravy train had derailed. His own parents, horrified by the public scandal and the revelation of his workplace investigation, distanced themselves quickly. I received dozens of messages from relatives and family friends, some apologetic for not seeing what was happening, others sharing their own stories of mistreatment at the hands of my parents. Cousin Emma became my official legal representative, helping navigate the increasingly complex case. As for me and Lily, we thrived. I finally took the helm of Cozy Crafts LLC publicly, expanding operations nationwide. We moved to Seattle for a fresh start, buying a beautiful house overlooking Puget Sound, a place where Lily could grow up surrounded by natural beauty and far from toxic family dynamics. Ashley sent a cease and desist letter through a budget attorney, claiming I was defaming her. My lawyer responded with our mountain of evidence, and we never heard from her lawyer again. Last I heard, she was working at Target, her influencer dreams fading as quickly as her followers had. My parents attempted reconciliation several times, sending tearful voicemails and emails professing their regret. I didn't respond. Some wounds run too deep for simple apologies to heal. The lawsuit settled out of court 6 months later. My parents agreed to pay back the inheritance plus interest, as well as a substantial sum for damages. The money wasn't the point. The acknowledgement of wrongdoing was. I donated half the settlement to a nonprofit supporting single parents, and the other half went into Lily's college fund, exactly where my inheritance should have gone in the first place. "Mom, do we have family besides you and me?" Lily asked one evening as we sat on our deck overlooking the water. It had been almost a year since that rainy night in Chicago. Lily hadn't asked about her grandparents or aunt in months, seeming to intuitively understand they weren't part of our lives anymore. "We have each other," I said, hugging her close, "and we have the family we choose." Our chosen family had grown significantly since our move. Karen, my former supervisor, had taken a job with a Seattle firm and become a close friend and mentor to me. The mothers from Lily's new school had welcomed us warmly into their community. My business partners and employees had become a tight-knit support system. And then there was Jackson, a fellow entrepreneur I'd met at a marketing conference, a widower himself with a son Lily's age. He understood grief and rebuilding in a way few others could. Our relationship was still new, still unfolding, but filled with promise. "Is Jackson family?" Lily asked, perceptive as always. "He could be, someday," I admitted. "Would that be okay with you?" She nodded solemnly. "He makes you smile. And Tyler is my best friend. That's better than the other family, right?" Out of the mouths of babes. "Yeah, sweetie, much better." As the sun set over Puget Sound, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the betrayal, the public confrontation. None of it had been easy, but sitting here now, with my daughter safe beside me and a future full of genuine love and respect ahead, I knew it had been worth it. My parents and sister had thought I was weak. They'd thought they could take and take without consequences. They'd thought I was a failure. They couldn't have been more wrong. I'm Audrey Lewis, and I finally learned that sometimes the most important family member to put first is yourself.